Uh, the Unless some benefactor comes through, some billionaire or two. Same thing I'm sure you're looking for at the Waltham Times. But barring that, if things continue as they are, then there will be all these people, young people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, uh, who will be going out into a job market, journalism job market, TV journalism or broadcast, video journalism job market, which is uh, shrinking as we speak. So one aspect of the crisis is literally the crisis of what do people do who want to do what you started out as a journalist. I've been a journalist by incredible stroke of good fortune, since Brandeis, since the 60s, basically, and then started working in 1970 as a journalist and have worked continuously ever since. I consider myself one lucky son of a bitch that I was able to do all that and have continued to be able to do it at age 81. But so that's one crisis. The other crisis you're talking about, of course, is just is more dangerous and no less real, which is where are people getting their news and what do they know? I've noticed that we were talking before this started about I was asking you how you started the Waltham Times, and you said to me how many nonprofit newspapers are there now in this country?
Probably several hundred.
Yeah, which is out of nowhere, right? I mean, there was no such thing. Um, and and the focus on local, I'm a big sports fan, so we get the Boston Globe. The Boston Globe sports section has gone more and more, very wisely, I think, toward school sports. It does. I'd say I don't know what percentage of the coverage is school sports, school football now, school basketball, but it's vastly, vastly more than it was. So there is this, think globally, act locally kind of thing um, that's provides something of a counterbalance. Excuse me, this is my uh, machine making noises as people try to contact me, but it's a real uphill battle. I mean, you alluded to a number of the problems all at once there. The bots, um, the inability to tell reality from not. But just leaving that aside, just the very reason you started the Waltham Times, as you were telling me, is because you're going to vote in the election. You didn't know who to vote for, and you didn't know what anybody knew. So that to not have coverage locally or nationally even uh, is, of course, it's a crisis because then then you're just listening. Then you're in with all the rhythms that are there, and most people are now getting their news from digital media. Uh, you're in, what's called the echo chamber, or you're being fed that which they think you will want to look at or listen to, which is what the more you look and listen, the more they can sell you to others. This is the old newspaper model, right? You sell stories to viewers, and then you sell the eyeballs to the advertisers. Uh, but the narrower it gets, the more fractionated and we become. That we'll get into the American Exchange Project and my modest efforts to try to do something about all this by bringing people back together. But I mean, what yours, things like the Waltham Times are, I think, the answer, but it's to a genuine crisis for sure.
Thanks, Paul. And if we talk about the news business itself,
Yeah.
clearly, I think everyone will agree the old newspaper business model failed, or
Well,
uh,
it was just superseded. It didn't so much. I mean, it failed due to technology. I mean, when you mentioned, me being, I was Boston After Dark, then the Phoenix, then doesn't the details need not detain us, but and then we started the real paper, which is supposed to be the real Phoenix because we all got laid off and started our own. We had a whole staff, and so we started the real paper. Well, there were two viable papers in the early 70s there because the Phoenix continued, and so we had two of them, and then I think the real paper ended in 81 and the Phoenix in the 90s. What happened? Classified ads. Once you went to classified ads online, a absolutely core aspect of our revenue, the revenues of those papers was gone. So it wasn't, they didn't fail. They were doing the same thing. It's just that technology wiped them out.
Well, it failed in the sense that their sources of revenue went
Oh,
elsewhere,
yeah. Well, no, in that
right?
sense,
Because
sure,
of
of course.
technology. Yes,
Yeah,
right.
right. But
Um,
it failed makes it sound like we did something wrong or, failed to do something. And that was not the case. I
right.
mean, or with
I,
even the big newspapers. I mean, same thing for the Globe. And look
yep.
how tiny the Globe is and look how many paid there. Even in my time, there was the Record American, there was the Herald, and the Globe and the Record American, whatever. And once there were I think in the 50s or 60s, there were seven daily newspapers in
Yep.
Boston.
Yep. So yeah. So well, I guess when things, fade out, and maybe in a healthy ecosystem, new things come in to take its place. And so what I'm interested in, I've often had arguments with journalist friends of mine who are all gloom and doom, like they don't see any solution. The advertisers are gone. That's it. There's no way to sustain a newspaper anymore. And I'm saying like, well, we've got to find a new way to that. What are some interesting, ideas in terms of a new business model? And I'll mention one that I thought was kind of interesting. Of course, it's the New York Times, which is a paper that has figured out, I think, how to thrive. I think financially, believe they're doing very well. And one of the sources of income that didn't exist before, but that contributes, and I don't know what percentage of their budget it contributes, but is their games and their cooking. So they have, in addition to subscribing to the news itself, you can, millions of readers subscribe to these,
Hmm.
services and entertainments that really
Yep.
don't have anything to do with the news, but instead of ads, they found something else that's sticky that generates revenue. Um, of course, you need a certain degree of technology to be able to like run do a Wordle or something. And how many Wordles can you have? Like, not every newspaper's gonna, you know,
Hey,
but
my wife,
still, yeah,
my Jan and I do the spelling bee every day. I don't know if she
yeah,
did it today, but I certainly do that. We have a subscription that includes the games.
yeah,
But look, the one what you're talking about is something that I think there's a deep yearning for now. Uh, and the Times has done a heck of a job of figuring out one approach to it, which is how do you involve people as opposed to being, passive recipients. I mean, this is interactive. Now, I'm not, and there's spelling bee buddy, and there's people giving you hints. There's a community, right, of people who are doing. I know spelling bee, but this can be true of lots of different things. And by the way, nothing new about this. When I stopped being the editor of Brandeis, the Justice, they now have two newspapers, but in those days one in the '60s, and so you served as editor in chief until the middle of your senior year. I then started doing a trivia column and getting people to write in and giving awards. It was a rinky-dink operation. Brandeis only had 1,500 students when I was there, but the ideas remain the same. That is, you want to bring people into the tent. You know this from what you're trying to do here. And yes, there's lots of there's lots of ways to try to get them in the tent. And I do think on the positive side that there is more of a yearning for that, not just playing the spelling bee, obviously, or playing a trivia contest, which go on to this day, right? Where there are Wednesday nights at the bar where everybody's playing trivia, but there's a yearning for the communal experience or the collective experience that the technology of the day has deprived us of. There was a football game on during Thanksgiving. For all the talk about a fractionated audience or a dispersed audience, one of the football games on this past Thanksgiving was the most watched football game ever, I believe. And that said to me, man, people really do want to have something in common to talk about and to have some way of connecting with each other, even if it's only sort of abstractly.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think that is that's what you're trying to do. And there's got to be a lot of ways to try to do it. And I can blue sky with you about it sometime or now, but yeah, and if you don't do that, then you're just another uh, something to not pay attention to.
Right. Uh, no, really good point. I think the building community around it, that's really important. That's something we're trying to crack because, for some of those things, like scale is a big part of it. And when you're in a smallish community, there's some limits to being able to scale. There's also, I mean, there's already like a large, very active Facebook group in Waltham and so on. So,
Yeah,
for
well, that's the kind of thing you want to be trading on, and you
right.
want to be recognizing people. That's what the Globe is doing with its schoolboy sports
Yep.
section. You
Yep.
want to be honoring them. You want to be giving them little, you know,
Exactly.
um, uh, I remember the word for, what swag.
Yeah.
Uh, but you're trying to build a community from the bottom up, and I think there's a tremendous a desire for it is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And there, I don't mean to get into the American Exchange Project that early, but just very briefly for the people who are here, it's a nonpartisan, nonprofit anti-polarization project, the American Exchange Project. It's a domestic foreign exchange program. High school seniors, right after they graduate, we send them for free to live in a community entirely unlike their own for a week, entirely unlike their own, live with a family, and then be with other people from all over the country, and then host for a week. And we're in Gloucester, and we're in Hingham, and we're in Kingston, Massachusetts, and we're in Anchorage, Alaska, Little Rock, Arkansas, Ennis, Montana, and we're in about 80 communities, 80 high schools, that is, in 80 different communities. Uh, and what are we trading on? What are we trying to do? We're trying to well, obviously, we're trying to bring people together. We all have more in common than divides us, but the mechanism is you're going to meet other people, you young people. I mean, Waltham Times is talking to a different audience, or certainly an
It's
older audience,
it's getting younger.
but there's no reason why you can't be a major factor at Waltham High, which we would love to sign on, by the way. And we pay a teacher to recruit people and then manage the week in that town or in that area. Um, but there's a tremendous yearning on the part of these young people, high school seniors again, uh, to get outside their communities. That's different than what you're doing, but to connect with other people in real life. What's now known, as offline.
Yeah.
Amazingly enough, the first time I heard that offline, yeah, I mean that's interpersonal connection is offline.
Yeah.
So the quite apart from the bitter irony of that phrase, it's real. It's a real yearning, and that's what that's the best we could come or I could come up with. I did it with a former student of mine, one of those places you were talking about my teaching, um, and we're up. We started out with 20 kids 5 years ago, and we had 552 this past summer, and we're trying to get it so that it's going to be every high school kid in America. So we have, kind of grandiose ambitions, but it's, but we, and it's really hard. It's really hard to sign on schools because the teachers are so overwhelmed. And even if we're paying them 8 grand, It's, oh my God, I've got, I'm teaching 5 AP courses, a guy told me the other day. And, how do I find time for this? And in the summer, I finally get to relax. And now you're telling me I've got a host for a week and, whatever. So I'm not suggesting that any of this is in any way easy. And I know you're not suggesting it either, but there is this untapped desire out there. And the more polarized we have gotten, the more there is this yearning to know the other, to among young people in particular, whose political identities aren't reified the way older people's are. But the I think my point is clear enough. That yearning, that desire, is something that one can trade on even within a community like yours or like Waltham. I used to live on the corner of Hammond and School Street for 2.5 years, so I know the area well.
Yeah. Well, I have contacted the Waltham schools about this program, have not heard back, so I will do so again. And I think one of our outreach volunteers mentioned someone who's a high school teacher at Waltham High School. So we'll give it another shot because I think it would be wonderful if we could get Waltham high school students involved
Yeah,
in their
and
class.
but I mean, it's like just like what you're doing. I mean, it's just uh, uh, it's just work. It's just it's keeping at it. It's calling that teacher back 5 times. It's we were talking again before we started. June speaks Japanese, and I've been trying to learn Japanese to almost no avail now for years. Uh, and how do you do it? And you use the term in Japanese, renshu that is practice, repeat, practice, practice, practice. It's the same thing, every single day. I'm talking when I interviewed 2 people today for the NewsHour. At the end, I said, "Listen, would you stick around for a minute?" And I pitched them on the American Exchange Project. You got to know somebody who knows somebody. It's the same thing that I think you all got to be doing, that
Yeah.
any community effort has to make.
Yes, and I'll make a pitch to our readers to talk to other people about the Waltham Times. And it is, as you say, people have a longing, the high school kids have a longing to meet people in other communities. I think when you're in a community like this, you have a longing to meet your neighbors. It's
Yes.
become very hard to do that. And I think one way we do this, one of our most popular, most asked for features was the community calendar. So this isn't, hard-boiled journalism. But it is a lot of curation, collecting information, but just putting it in one place and people can say, oh, this weekend I have an opportunity to go to a concert and meet other people, go to an art show, go to a carol, tree lighting thing, so that
Hey,
longing is there. Yeah.
my first job, my first paid job, 1970, Boston After Dark. What was Boston After Dark? What it started in the 60s. What was it? It was telling you what was happening
Yes.
in Boston after dark.
Yeah.
That's why it had its name. Then it expanded when I got there to becoming more political. But that was the core. The core was what's happening,
Yeah.
and nobody was doing it. The Globe then took over that function in the early 70s, and that became a real challenge for the alternative newspapers, so-called. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. What's happening? Where's it happening? Make it as convenient as possible, and letters to the editor. And how did you feel about it? And what rating did you give it? Have people do, a number rating system on events or something, or venues or parks, or I don't know. I mean, again, I'd be happy to blue sky sometime, probably not here, but yes, to bring people into the tent.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much. And yes, we should talk offline because we have a zillion ideas of like how to engage people more and how to keep growing. Um, and I guess since we have a lot of readers online, what can the community do, I mean, to support this type of, the Waltham Times, this type of enterprise?
Well, you know that far better than I would. I mean, there's obviously donate. You can donate time and donate money. But I and I don't have a good answer to this. So it's you're asking me, and so I feel obliged to answer. But I don't have anything more to say about that than what I've already said, which is you want people, and I'm projecting from what we're trying to do at the American Change Project. You want people to feel that they're part of something that's bigger than themselves.
Mhm.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
every religion, every
yeah.
political party. It's that's the name of the game, or the fundamental draw. And so that's what you that's what you should be. That's trying to. I don't know you are trying to do that, but in as many ways as possible, whether it's having parties or street parties or block parties that's sponsored by the Waltham Times, or uh, and get somebody from each block to be the host of the block party. It's not. I wouldn't do it this time of year. I wouldn't. I'd wait till April.
Well,
But
this is a good time of year to start planning something
yes, yes,
for
absolutely,
spring and summer.
absolutely potluck. You know. Block party um or Chris this time of year, organize block by block. It's too late for Halloween, but do it for Christmas carols or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
It you have a I don't know if it's as different as our project is, but what do we do when we have kids come to town? If they're in Ennis, Montana, for example, they help start the rodeo. They do a day of community service, serving at the local food kitchen or whatever. They go on whitewater rafting. It's all local things. I
Hmm.
mean, it's local things in lots of different places. It's not the same, but I think we do, of our 60 communities this summer, I think there were 5 rodeos, right? Because we're heavy in Rocky Mountain states because those kids are so isolated, their teachers feel. Um, but it's incredibly local stuff that they do. It's not, you know,
No, and that's, that's what, and anybody can do that, and it actually has
absolutely
impact right
anybody.
in front of you.
I'm sure
So,
everybody, you got 40 some odd people on here, close to 50, or now it's 50. And I mean, every person who's listening to us, every one of you, I should address you, uh, surely can have some idea or knows someone or has a kid or a grandkid or who can be doing something that involves people, neighbors, as you say, June, or people on the block or people who are in the same, we don't have, particularly Kiwanis clubs and Lions clubs anymore, not very large membership of those. They used to be such a big deal. But ad hoc groups, Patriots, Waltham Times, Patriots Sunday, watching the Patriots game together, that potluck, and get a local, tavern or whatever, or just a community space where you've got a really nice TV and you and everybody can watch the Patriots together. There's just a million things you can do. You have to be extremely energetic and probably somewhat imaginative, and then you see what works and what doesn't work.
we'll get into the party business.
Well, yes, no, but
Yeah,
that's
pretty
yeah,
much.
but the party absolutely get into the party business. That's what you're doing. You're
Yeah,
trying to build a community or rebuild a community or reconnect people within a community. And therefore, what are parties for?
great.
if if it's not for
Well,
that very purpose.
I would love to open things up to
Yeah,
questions
please.
from the audience, and we have one. So you should have like a little hand raise uh, paddle thing. I don't know where they put it these days.
They put it down the bottom.
Down at the bottom. I'm in the share screen mode, so I can't see it. But you can use that, and I should be able to see this as your hand go up as the moderator, or Paul can see it, and he can call
No,
him.
I can't because I can only
Oh,
see
you can only see.
I can only see like 7 people, including unfortunately myself. But so I can scroll and see, but it takes too
Okay.
long to do that.
I think
So
when someone raises their hand, don't they pop to the top of the
this I do
scroll?
not know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just saw Sarah on there. You want to test that, Sarah? See if you raise your hand, if it makes you pop to the top of the, or maybe not. Let's see. Well, I do have.
In the bottom is something, the little heart, and it
Oh,
says
yes, it worked. Sarah popped to the top. I thank
react.
you. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we
Yeah.
tested that. That works. So if you push on the hand raise, we will see you and we can call on you. And I will start by asking a question on behalf of someone who couldn't be here tonight but just texted me with this question. And she says, I am surrounded by wonderful neighbors whose political convictions are totally different from mine. My choice has been to simply stay away from any discussion of political views. At times, I feel completely inauthentic. I'm horrified by our current leadership and feel complicit by saying nothing when someone touts the current administration and everybody nods all around. What are your thoughts? How?
Well, I have, because of the American Exchange Project, I have I have very distinct thoughts about this, but I'll tell an anecdote which I think embodies them. So one of our towns is a town of 14,000 people in Texas called Kilgore, one of our original four communities by pure chance. 65 churches in Kilgore, 14,800 people. We were trying to uh, get a fundraiser in Kilgore to involve more people in the community, although many, many, many people now are involved because we've been there. This is our fifth year of having been there. So I went down there and spoke at the Lions Club in Kilgore, Texas. Maybe as many people as are here now, uh, mainly older, not yeah, even my age, some of them. And we started off and we sang "My Country 'Tis of Thee," which I happen to know and did a rousing rendition of. Then we pledged allegiance to the flag. Then we pledged allegiance to the state flag of Texas, which was that's fairly new. And so the words were up on the wall at the Lions Club for people who didn't know yet, and of course people like me who what. And then when I got up and talked in front of the American flag there, uh, I said that uh, this was the perfect introduction for me, the perfect preface for me, and I wasn't lying, and I said I actually had chills uh, because we're all Americans, we're all human beings, and we all have way more in common than divides us. And I said to them, and I say to your the person who's asking the question about how to do this, how to bridge the gap, bridge the divide. I said, look, what, what do you care what my politics are? You care if I'm going to be respectful to you. You care if I'm nice to your kids. You care if I hold the door open for somebody who's having trouble walking. There are about 100 things you would care about. I said to these people, and they're all, hardened in their views. And my goodness, I'm sure there were, 95% of them were as different in their political position as the person whose question you just read, as different from me as her neighbors are from her. Uh, but so let's talk about things we have in common. What do we want from our neighborhood in Waltham? What are we missing? What are we I don't believe that I don't think there's anybody you can't get along with. I might be wrong. I mean, psychopaths, uh, there are obviously people who you can't get along with. But the what's being described there in your reading of the question is just exactly what we face at the American Exchange Project anywhere we go. And and we have no problems. Again, it's younger people. I understand it's not the same as with people who think they know what political correctness or what politics should be or what we should be doing as a polity. But I don't. I used to when the Patriots were riding high. When I'd go to the South for whatever it was. This is before the American Exchange Project. The way I broke the ice with people was saying, "Look, hi, my name's Paul Solman. I'd like to apologize for being a New England Patriots fan." Everybody laughed. and it just was like, oh, right. You're a football fan. I'm a football fan. What they hated the Patriots. They hated Belichick. They hated Brady, but they were perfectly happy to connect around our differences, not our similarities, with regard to football. So, um, so that's my long-winded. I'm typically long-winded response to that question, which is don't have to talk about politics. If you do talk about politics, it would be, look, I was brought up differently. I see the world differently, but you know, I love you anyway. And I hope you feel the same about me. If you need something, I'm here for you. Politics aside.
Hmm. So, well, I think this
Uh, If you don't have questions, I'll cold call people. That's what I used to teach at the Harvard Business
more on that
School.
because I think this person's saying, well, there are these safe topics. But I think she's saying, I mean, like that if stick to safe, so-called safe point of view someone has expressed and feels she can't respond in an authentic way. I mean, and I guess there may be ways to respond that
You can
are that don't
authentically.
trigger, a
Look,
negative
I
reaction.
don't. Well, look. I'm not. I don't know the people she's talking about.
Yeah.
Obviously, there may be people who are just so head up there. They're willing to that they're primed to attack or something. I don't. But what if I were in that situation, and I have been, and the Lions Club was an example of it, and it's not by no means the only example. I would do what I've done, and what do we? Let's talk about our grandkids. What's happening now to these kids? I mean, for people my age, we all have in common the worries that we were talking about earlier with regard to people going into journalism about the kids, the future for our kids. What are you doing with your grandkids? Are you helping them get a leg up, or are you in despair? I mean, now, you know, well, Donald Trump has the right idea. Baby, he's got these new child accounts, which are it's a bipartisan idea forever. And so great. I mean, then there's a common ground, even, geez, yes, it would be great if maybe our community contributed more to the kids in our neighborhood so that they have enough when they get to the age that, to 18 or whatever, to have a grub stake for regarding going to college or putting a down payment eventually on a home. I,
Well, that's a great example. That's actually in Waltham. You do see a lot of that of people who, doesn't matter what political tribe or whatever they might belong to. I think you see people coming together around things like there are a number of scholarship funds and things of that sort that are out there, with donations from across the city and then going to Waltham High School students and so on. So those, you know,
well,
and those
so
are
if
the
it's
kinds of thing we're trying to highlight, that they
Yeah, well, but
exist
I
and
mean,
out there.
if it's a group of people that you're very friendly with, but you're afraid to, I'm just still
Yeah,
speaking to this question,
yeah.
and you're afraid to talk to them about that, about politics. Say, look, we disagree about politics, but what do we agree about?
Hmm.
We agree that our kids are going to need us. Can we do something together that helps our kids? I mean, I don't know. I'm just making it up, but that's the kind of thing I would try to do.
So, to our audience, if you do have questions for Paul, and it could be on this topic about the news, it could be about if you want to know more about the American Exchange Project and how that works, or anything about Paul's long and storied career. What,
Storied, yeah.
people- please go ahead and don't be shy. Raise your hand. Oh, I see a bunch of chat. Let's see.
Yeah, people can put just questions in the chat. That's easy.
Okay, Anne's hand is raised. Anne, would you
Just
like to
Hi,
speak up?
yeah, I'm here. I actually lowered my hand because I don't really have a question.
No, you just
It's more
talk.
of a
This is a
comment, and I'm
It's fine.
it's kind of a reaction. I just want to push back a little bit on what you've said, and I don't. This is probably not very helpful at all, but I mean, I think someone's politics is way more important than whether or not they hold the door open for somebody, because we're at a point where people's politics, like these people don't think that I'm a person. And that's really disturbing and problematic and should not be excused.
Uh,
And that these things that you disagree about are really important. I don't care about whether how you feel about your grandkids. I care about whether or not you think people deserve rights. And that's kind of a major thing. I mean, these people destroyed American democracy, and I don't know how, maybe I'm just like traumatized by this, but I don't know how I can forgive that. They've normalized so much terrible behavior. How do we all bring ourselves back to a point where like being a Nazi is not okay anymore?
yeah, but see, so my reaction, look, you take it for what it's worth or not worth, but if that's the way you're going to relate to people or the way you think about them, then you're not going to. Then of course you're not going to be able to relate. Lots of people who are supporting this current administration are people who just think that all the woke behavior and stuff that the pronouns and stuff just went too far, made them feel like they were belittled, dissed. Uh, and I've seen the quote again and again. We know he's a bad guy, but the Democrats are worse. Um, or he makes me laugh. So if I'm not saying you shouldn't feel the way you feel. I feel similarly personally with regard to, the kinds of things that have been going on in the last year in particular. I started the American Exchange Project, or started when in 19 yeah, I'm sorry, in 2016. I started trying to do an anti-polarization project in 2016 when President Trump came down the escalator because and I saw how much enthusiasm he was generating. And I thought this is already and going to tear the country apart. Now, it I think I wouldn't have felt that way, I suppose, if I was a Trump supporter. But I I'm only giving you what I've been trying to do now for, a decade, which is try to find the common ground and not demonize the other because I'll be more demonized if I do that. But that's all I got. I mean, and if it's too much and too traumatic for you, then don't do anything that's going to make, traumatize you. That's for sure.
Well, I wonder often, I mean, people who have these opposing views in this day and age seem to live in different realities. We go back to the problem with the news and the fact that people are getting a particular version of facts and events, and I try to put myself into, like, if I saw that and believed all that was true, I can understand why people might feel, that you're presented with all this evidence, turns out it's not real, as far as I can tell, not verified evidence that the election was stolen. But if you truly believed it was, can you understand how people would, but going, then you can go back to shared values, like they're reacting in a way that, if you in a different, operating a different set of facts would react similarly. Because,
Yes, of course.
yeah.
Look, I mean, Catholics and Protestants both deeply believed in Jesus Christ, and they slaughtered each other for a century and from the very beginning of Christianity. If you read Gibbon, Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, the they were fighting. They were literally killing each other over specific interpretations of Scripture. Um, so there's nothing new. The only story I got is St. Francis, who uh, during one of the Crusades walked all the way across, if I've the accounts I've read are correct, to go talk to the Muslim leader. And you know, he was Saint. He wasn't Saint Francis yet, but uh, it wasn't a saint yet. But uh, that's all I'm talking about. Whether I mean that people have been in tribes that have been killing each other for probably back into the Paleolithic, right? Uh, and so, what can you do? You do the best you can. And I'm just saying, talking about the grandkids is better than going fuck you. That's all.
Question from Alan. Maybe this will be the last one we have for Q&A before we then proceed to our next part of the program. But he says, I feel the most important problem of our time is the lack of trust in each other and in our
Yeah.
institutions. And to be fair, both major political parties have earned this distrust. I'm curious as to any thoughts on this and how we can improve this situation.
Well, trust starts with doing things for other people, that they wouldn't expect, and that they're grateful for, and showing that you're dependable. That's what trust is. That's how trust is built. And all I've done, my entire career as a journalist has been to work for organizations I trust, which are trying to be trustworthy. That's why I've only, I think I overdid it early on in my career. I think it was too partisan with regard to those alternative papers we were talking about, uh, self-righteously partisan. Um, but I've only worked for public television since locally, starting in 1977 and then nationally in 85. And I've had offers from other places. I didn't trust them. I didn't trust them to be loyal to me. I didn't trust them to uh, to report what was important. Not that I agree with everything the NewsHour has done, but in a way, we're almost the last place standing with regard to being utterly, um, punctiliously, almost pathologically uh, accurate to the best of our ability. Uh, we have people, we have people in our organization who fact check our own story scripts,
Hmm.
and we have to footnote, and it's a pain in the ass, by the way. Do we have to footnote all the facts in our scripts, and they go back and listen I think regularly to the actual interviews we've done to make sure we haven't taken the interviews anything out of context or introduced the person in a way that's inaccurate. And we've been caught up any number of times. So I think trust is absolutely it's as an essential a part of my ethos as there is. But as I say, I've been lucky enough to make a living, modest, but a living working for trustworthy organizations. So
It's
I
interesting.
understand that's luck.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a big reason why I and so many others have decided to invest our effort in a local newspaper because local newspapers are supposedly more trusted, still a relatively highly trusted institution. And it's interesting when you're describing your fact-checking process. That's what we do. I mean, we fact-check everything. Our reporters attach the recordings of their interviews so the editors can go in and
Yeah, there you
listen
go.
back and stuff like that. All of that is in
Yeah.
place there. So, and the fact that we're local, like if people, you know, when you see them around all the time and they see you, you're accountable to them. And
Yes,
they know they
absolutely.
have their own eyes. They can say, well, those Christmas tree lights were green, not red. You got that wrong, or
Yep.
you
Yep.
spelled so and so's name. All of those things, having that level of accountability and being local, I think helps build trust, and that's a big part of why we're doing what we're doing. So,
Do
well,
a weekly contest with readers to find something that's not true in your paper.
oh, there'll be so many.
That's all right. It'll get them involved. I'm just trying to I'm just trying to be helpful here.
I love that.
Believe me, people love it. I've never actually done it, but I've often thought that I don't have the nerve, and the way we do things at the NewsHour, you can't really do this, but I've thought I should occasionally make a mistake on purpose.
Uh-huh. Kind of
So
bury
that,
something and then people can go look for it.
yeah, I've
You
done
found it.
quizzes, but I've never, but I've thought, because I know how good I feel when I catch something that's a
Yeah,
mistake.
yeah, yeah. Well, I love that idea. We might institute that, and I think if you find a factual error in our reporting, maybe you win something we
Yeah,
hang in our
you get
hats,
you you get fact checking swag.
Yes. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Paul. We're going to move on now to, and you are absolutely welcome to stick around but we'll move on to the next part of our program.
Terrific. Well, anyway,
So,
thanks for the
thank you,
opportunity.
Paul.
American Exchange Project, you can look it up online. Please get involved. Every one of you will know someone who knows someone. It's in Waltham, it's in
Right.
wherever, Somerville, Watertown, and just it's an absolute win-win situation for everybody who gets involved, whether it's the host families or not. I'll give you one last datum and then I'm gone, which is we of the 550 kids this summer, 440 or so responded to a questionnaire. Would you recommend it to a friend? 100%, literally 100%. On a scale of 1 to 10, how enthusiastically would you recommend it? The average on a scale of 1 to 10 was 9.7.
Wow.
So it's a fantastic experience. These kids are starved to meet other kids, certainly other kids from other places, to go somewhere for nothing, go to Montana, Anchorage, Alaska. I mean, all Jackson, Mississippi. Um, and so
So to bring that to
please,
Waltham, you need a Waltham, maybe a history teacher at
yes,
the high
just
school who would become the local sort of
yes, it's called
sponsor coordinator
our
for this.
we call them the exchange manager.
Yeah.
We convene
All
them
right.
every year in person. Please help us out,
Got
and I'll
okay.
do anything you want with regard to Waltham Times, as you know,
Thank
June.
you so much.
Bye,
All
everybody.
right. Take care. Bye. So we got our marching orders. If you know anyone who can help bring the American Exchange Project into the Waltham High School, let me know or let Paul know. All right, so this is the portion where I'm going to give kind of what I call an annual report. I'll keep it very short, just to share our progress with you. So many of you were with us at the beginning or along the way and supported us, and so we owe it to you to share what we've done. So, as you know, before we started, Waltham was a news desert, but since we launched October 2024, just over a year ago, we've published 1,800 stories. We've gotten over 500,000 views of our website. We're putting out that newsletter 3 times a week, still free to everybody. We have 3,100 email subscribers, and we hope in the coming year to start to publish some kind of a limited print edition, and start to also produce some multimedia formats, and probably try to also follow through on some of these great ideas that Paul has suggested. Um, and this is a little bit of the timeline. So in 2024, as you know, we got set up as a nonprofit, had our forum, we got involved with the BU local newsroom project. We launched the website and newsletter in February. We were accepted in the Bentley Incubator. We had, as you know, marketing campaigns over the years with our lawn signs, our postcard, our A-frames. We were accepted by the INN, which is the Institute for Nonprofit News. And that was a big deal because when we started and I looked at the requirements to join them, I'm like, oh my goodness, how are we ever going to get there? And we got there by April. And we had interns this summer through the Waltham Partnership for Youth. We are now working with BU and Brandeis journalism programs and also starting to do so with Bentley. We just last week hired a part-time editor, so our first staff hire. We have had freelance reporters that we pay, and then now we have a part-time editor. And in 2026, we hope to have a consultant or a board member with development experience who can really help us ramp up our fundraising efforts, especially around like grants and major donors. And as I mentioned, we hope to start to put out maybe special print edition and start to build up our advertiser base. So most of the people that you're going to see here on this list are volunteers, 9 board members. We have different project teams, community outreach, marketing team, our newsroom, apart from the freelancers, all volunteer editors, some volunteer writers, photographers, copy editors, and people putting up the website. And our key partners are invaluable. And our marketing strategy was very simple. There used to be a newspaper everybody knew about. We want to be the new newspaper that everybody knows about. We still have a ways to go. There are about 67,000 people in Waltham. So I see some of you out there have lawn signs. We thank you so much because we do get a lot of people signing up who saw the lawn signs or the A-frames. And to just find a way to mention it anywhere you can. If you patronize a local business or, talk to a neighbor or whatever. It's I don't know if there's a magic formula to getting everybody in the city to know about us, but I think it will take all of us to get there. So some brass tacks. This is what our finances look like. If you know what, most city newsrooms have multi-million dollar budgets. We are on a shoestring, and I have to say, I think it's bloody miraculous we put out what we do on such a slender budget. So at the top are our sources of revenue. So this year, I think we're kind of on track. These are projections, but we're almost near the end of December. So one-time donations, about 56,000, a little over 25,000 in major gifts. So these are from individual donors, but multi-thousand, $5,000, $10,000 gifts. We have brought in some grants and sponsorships of that amount. About 14,000 comes through this Institute for Nonprofit News End of Year Match Challenge. I'll talk about that in a moment. We project revenue of about 30,000 from people who are monthly donors. I'll talk more about why that's so important. And we're starting to do, I don't know if we're going to hit 20,000 advertising. We just a few weeks ago brought on board a contractor who is going to be trying to sell ads for us, and it makes a difference when someone's dedicated to doing that. We've made a couple of ad sales already, and I hope that, just primes the pump for more and more ad sales. It's just great to have someone out there selling ads. It makes a difference. Our newsroom budget, this is 96,000 projected. That's what we have spent this year on freelance reporters, marketing and ad sales, including the cost of all those postcard mailings, the printed material, and so on. Part of that is also in development and fundraising. You can see administration. I think that's just basically software that we need. Legal and accounting, fortunately, we have not had to spend this. We budgeted as you want it there in case you need it. And the contingency for the same reason, you want it there if you need it. But we so far have not, knock on wood. And next year, we hope to pretty much double our functional expenses and at the same time around, more or less double our revenue. So how are we going to get there? Well, first, I wanted to show you on the left, give you an idea of what our expenses are. So City Hall is by far the largest, covering that. This city has about 3 to 7 meetings a week. Somebody has to go sit in those meetings, take notes, understand what's being said, sometimes these cases take weeks to wend their way through, or years really, to wend their way through different committees and so on. And it just takes, it's a brute force. You got to sit there, be there, and report it accurately. So that's about a $60,000 expense a year, just that. And then we want to run feature articles covering arts and culture, local sports, local business, other features. So let's say we're trying to get about one of these out per week. It comes to 7,200 per each area. So our total news budget is approximately 88,800. That's just for that sort of real basic coverage that you want to see in a city newspaper. People ask us, well, we want to see you do more hard-hitting investigative journalism. We would love to as well. But bear in mind that when you have an investigative reporter going after something, it's like hiring somebody full-time to be on something for weeks, maybe months. It's very expensive. I would estimate, 8,000 a story or more. And some newspapers, you have a really complex investigation. It might be a full year for one person just to be on that. So you can imagine how much that costs and what it will take for us to get there. We also, on the left side, you'll see our the revenue side of things. So monthly donors, I mentioned, they're so important because we know what our monthly expenditures are. If we know that amount is coming in on a regular basis, that makes that makes my life easier because I'm trying to balance the books every month. And if you are dependent on sporadic one-time donations and you don't know if they're coming in or coming out, or grants, you're not sure when they're going to be issued and if you're going to get one or not, it's very tenuous. But monthly donors are rock solid. And really, let's say, $10 a month, hopefully something that, not everybody can spare that, but I hope many of you can put in $10 a month with barely noticing it really. And right now we have 230 monthly donors. So that's less than 10% of our email subscribers right now. If we could get to 10% of our email subscribers, so that's about 300 members, putting in $10 a month, that gives us 36,000 a year. If we can get up to 500 of you, that's 60,000. That's all getting close. That will cover our city hall coverage costs. If we get to 1,000 members, now we're really getting to where I feel is a sustainable level. And 1,000 members is 1 out of 3 of our email subscribers. And I would love to think that 1 in 3 of you feel that you're getting at least $10 of value a month from having the Waltham Times. And I'm trying to advance the slide. It wants me to stick there. So we're at the last few weeks of our year-end campaign, and the Institute for Nonprofit News has something called News Match, which is an end-of-year matching gift campaign. So they will donate, I think it was 14 or 15,000. They will match that if we raise that much from our members. And then Bar Foundation pitched another 2,000, and they'll match the next 2,000 raised. And I am really pleased to announce that we have met that. So we are going to get that extra $14,000, $15,000. But we still have a ways to go to reach our goal of raising a total of $65,000 by the end of the year, so that we can cover our budget. Every dollar counts to power our reporting. And also, if you are not currently a monthly donor and decide you want to become one, the number of new monthly donors earns us extra bonus funds from INN. So this is a great time to consider becoming a monthly member. In addition, we have these hats that everybody asks us where they can buy one. So we said, okay, well, we can't, they're not for sale, but you can earn one if you make a donation of $75 or more, or if you become a monthly donor at $5 per month or more, you will get a hat. In January, we'll go through our list, and everybody who reached that level of donation will be contacted to ask if you want a hat. Um, and that is my spiel, my annual report. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or and I think you all know where to find out. Yeah, you're all signed up. That's probably why you're here. Various links to get involved. So thank you so much. And now I'm going to stop sharing so we can get into the community storyboard, a story conference. Hi, everybody. It's good to see your faces. And I'm just checking. Sarah says it's a $15,000 match. Yes. And I do need to share again. Now I need to share a Word document because we're going to start taking notes. This is the time where you get to suggest and talk about topics you think we should be covering. Um, and where is that Word doc? There it is. All right. Okay, so the first topic up is City Hall. What should we be covering related to our local government? Anyone just raise your hand or put it in the chat? Yes, Susan. Oh, you need to unmute yourself.
I'm concerned about the so-called second-class citizenship that I and 300 other streets in Waltham have, that we pay the same taxes as everybody, but the city of Waltham doesn't accept us as public roads.
Okay, so
So
the
that
private way.
I understand there are 300 private ways, which sounds to me like a large number.
Yeah. That has been something we've been interested in. We have not been able to easily get our hands on a map of where the private ways are.
I haven't been able to either. I just know that I applied for public road status for my street and the 4 contiguous streets.
Okay.
And they have said no, and we have tried to appeal it, but we're just getting nowhere.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, a lot of people have raised this. If anybody knows a way to get that information, or we may just have to go bury ourselves in the basement and go through meticulously one by one to figure out where the private ways are. Um, that's any other, and feel free to either just unmute yourself and speak up because I think everybody else is on mute, or use the
June,
little hand raise. Yes. Hi,
June,
Priscilla.
hi. I work at on the election on election day,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering if it might be of interest to interview some of the other people who spend 14, maybe more hours a day on the elections.
Yeah, we would love to do that. Thank you. Great idea. Other ideas?
June, I'm curious if any of the other folks here have ideas about how to get to younger people.
In terms of our readers, or in
Just
terms of,
just just overall, because it seems like there's I've been out on the common doing protests, and you know, I'm at the younger edge
Mhm.
of the group, and you know, that means that it starts at 60 and goes up from there. And I'm curious how um, I was going to talk to Paul too about this, but this idea of how to I don't expect you to have an answer. I just was throwing that out there as a thought. And the second thought I had was that there is my wife and I went to a zoning meeting about Moody Street, but it was really a traffic meeting.
Mhm.
And they really were not looking at it as a community space. They were looking at it as a roads problem. And I
Okay.
wonder if there's some reporting that could be done on that. And because she's a landscape architect and I'm a design builder, it doesn't seem like the city really has place for input for um, better public space design ideas. So,
Okay.
two thoughts.
Okay.
I'd like to speak to the younger people involvement. I have been involved with a lot of younger people in college, just out of college people, and high school kids, and they are very responsive and interested in a lot of things, the environment, affordable housing, stopping wildlife and pets being killed by rodenticide. Their response has just blown me away. And so, I don't know how you can get involved with them. I know that we did some outreach with Brandeis. I just bump into people and talk to them. Um, I also do Bike Together Waltham, and it's a mixed age group, but a lot of young people. And I'm just really thrilled with how responsive and by the way, my grandchildren are people and they're 24 and 18 and they have ideas and they're like really kind and also very interested in the environment. And they're young people in Waltham, they're interested in the immigration situation. I just find they might not be in the Waltham Common, but they are in a lot of places. I don't know how to tell you to go about finding them. I'm stumbling across them, and it's been awesome.
I think it might be a connectivity issue. And again, like we've been trying to get younger readers to the Waltham Times. So, yeah, when you meet them, tell them, please sign up for the Waltham Times. They may not remember what the role of a city newspaper can be and maybe relying solely on social media or something to stay connected. So,
What if they had a column that they were responsible for writing on a regular basis from the high school?
we have tried that. We'll keep
Oh, you
trying.
have tried. Okay.
I wonder if an idea would be to pitch it as a benefit for their college applications,
You would,
right?
yeah.
Because you can be the editor of the high school newspaper, but what if you're also a columnist at a local public? I don't know.
Yep.
Actually, maybe having a contest for columnists and having people submit and might
And
get their attention more than just like, hey, we'd
Or a
like to.
photographer.
photography, column, also advocacy, if the kids, here's what high school students or junior high school students are thinking about in Waltham right now.
Mhm,
The line and get some pictures of the kids in, and that gets parents involved.
mhm. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Uh,
Others? Yes.
yeah, I have one. So back to the city hall
Yes.
category there. I noticed that the mayor is almost never quoted or uh, comments on things that happen that even involve her directly.
Mhm.
And that puzzles me. I wonder if there's a problem why she isn't speaking to us.
Um, Good question. We certainly ask her every time something comes up where we feel the mayor might want to have input, and she almost never does. And maybe, I don't know, maybe,
Yeah, I would just
yeah,
hope that
almost
we'd at
never.
least make note of that clearly in the article,
I,
because I think that leads to great frustration on my part. Since we know in the form of government we have here in Waltham, has a tremendous amount of power and responsibility. So that's my comment.
well, yeah, we do try to note in any article if we have contacted anyone for quote, including the mayor, or it could be, counselor or anyone else. If they have not responded by the time it goes to press, we do note that we reached out to them. So,
Okay.
couple of
Thank
people
you.
raise their hands. For some reason, I'm not seeing.
Yeah, me
Yes.
again. I don't know if this is City Hall or public safety, but I would love to hear more about the license plate cameras that have been installed all over the city. It seems that the more I find out about them, the more, I don't know, fishy they seem. I'm maybe less concerned about what the Waltham Police Department will do with them and more concerned about what the company is going to do with our data. Um, and this might be because I'm a data scientist and this is the kind of thing I do for a living. But I want to emphasize that I think the Waltham Times needs to stay on top of what's going on with this.
Um, yeah, no, I would love to. I mean, I guess what is the next step beyond the reporting we have done? Um, but we can talk offline about that.
Right. I think you emailed me to follow up on something, I think.
Okay. Well, we
So
can
you
we
probably
can.
have my contact information already.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Um, all right. Rob, you have your hand up.
Yes. So I was thinking in terms of the young people, and I know there's some Facebook page associated with Waltham, which I occasionally will check in with. But then I was also thinking, do we have any connection with that page? I think that it's completely independent. But is there a way that we could have some kind of a promotion on that? If maybe we do, maybe we don't, I don't know. And then I was thinking also that Facebook tends to be older people like myself. So what is the other social media like, TikTok or Instagram, which is what young people seem to use a lot. I'm not on either one, so I can't help can't help you with that. But it seems like a social media somehow in reaching young people because they're not going to use their email to like get the weekly newsletter. I don't think they just tend not to use email the way we do. So those were just a couple thoughts about those things. And then the other thought I had was I know there's a Waltham free cycle. So are there other just Waltham things that we could connect with somewhere in the site um, if we don't already?
Um, well, we definitely have somewhat of a presence on the Waltham residents page, which is by far the largest social media page that I know of. It's got 37,000 members, although some percentage of them may be bots from what I can tell, but it's still a pretty large number, by probably an order of magnitude over some of the other social networks. So, um, but definitely, Andrew, Andy, hi, you have your
Hi,
hand.
June. Yes, I just wanted to support the prior comment about trying to reach a younger audience through established social media channels. I like the Waltham Reddit page, and I think their statistics claim that they get about 8,000, discrete views a week. And I have seen folks posting links to Waltham Times articles on Reddit, and sometimes I actually click them because I hadn't found that article when I was, just scanning the weekly watch email. So I think it's helpful. It probably is reaching a younger and different audience than the one that we may get through our own email distribution, and it's free. So, why not? I think that should be a sort of more concerted effort to constantly be reposting articles on available social media channels, because again, it costs nothing. It's just the time and not very much of that. And I think that's a way to leverage the content and reach new audiences that are out there and may have different demographics than we're hitting, on our own.
Yeah, no, we have right now a volunteer who posts almost all of our stories on Facebook and Instagram. It does take some time because for those media, you have to actually create like a graphic that's optimized for Facebook or Instagram. There's different rules about how you post, but she does that, and that's made a big difference. That's grown our Facebook followers quite significantly. Maybe not as quite as much for Instagram. Um, and for Reddit, I think to be effective, I mean, this is a great thing for a volunteer who's on, say, Reddit regularly, is just to keep it in mind, to post, share something. But I think to engage people, you need at least to make a comment or say something about it to provoke interaction, and then follow up with interacting with the people, start a conversation and so on. And that does take a little more time. Uh, and as I said, that would be a wonderful role for a volunteer if they happen to already be on those sites and like engaging with people on them, I would say. And if you are on the Facebook pages, just hit share with your own network. That will help with the algorithm. So,
Well, sorry, I don't know how to wave on Facebook. I
okay,
mean, on this, but I'm just going to jump in. Andrew's comment was good. I see a lot on YouTube, for example, where people put in a portion of what's to know and then direct you to the website to find the rest if you're interested. And so a teaser to each of these Reddit, Facebook, whatever, could also be a way to get more traffic onto the Waltham News site. I'm sure you know that. But
yeah, no, these are really terrific. Just wish there weren't so many social media platforms now because each one has its own little sub community. We have thought about TikTok. That seems to be the leading platform for young people to get their news. Um, but what you notice with something like TikTok is that there are people who become real experts at creating TikTok content. And it's video, it's short, snappy, engaging, funny, and that takes a real set of skills that maybe some of the college students might be interested in that, but definitely not in our wheelhouse at the moment.
Hi, this is Liz Holder.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. Hi, Liz.
Yes. Um, Having been a high school teacher for years, I think maybe one way to get young people more involved is to have a photo contest. Because that, if they are taking a photo and writing a caption, that's a lot less time for them, and they think very visually. So you could start with maybe the art teachers and ask if they have good photographers who would submit some of their photographs. Also, maybe some kids who are interested in photography relating to the high school sports. But I think photographs might be a way to get them more involved.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
And I'm going to speak up. Priscilla had mentioned the Waltham Land Trust, and I want to reiterate too that that we welcome. We have a lot of different. The Waltham Land Trust has a lot of different activities, and some of them you can bring young families who have babies in strollers, and they're open to people of all different ages, and they'll usually note whether it's okay to bring a dog because it might scare birds. A lot of times it doesn't matter. You can bring your dog. And also, we do welcome people of all ages. Some of the paths are more difficult, and we usually mention whether they're more challenging or the easier walks where you can bring strollers. And so that's something you can do together as an activity. And they have activities pretty much throughout the year. And in February, they have a school program where parents can bring their children for different activities. They'll have reptiles, different mammals, and different presentations.
So, do you feel the Waltham Times should cover these or have somebody representing it there at these types of events? Which you do
Um,
a lot, Emily, so which I should thank you for already.
Sure. Whatever can get more people together, doing more stuff together. That's like a really,
Yep.
and of course we're a non, I shouldn't say we're, but I am with the Waltham Land Trust, but it is a nonprofit, so we depend on membership too, but you don't have to be a member to participate in these events.
Mhm.
So we would just love to have people join us and just enjoy being together and enjoy the events.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for letting us know about that. Um, so I'm trying to go through in some order here. Anything else relating to zoning? I mean, we have a whole new zoning code, who knows what, coming up before the end of this year.
It might be informative to look into the ADU details as they're developing for Waltham. My understanding is city by city, they can't override the state law, but they can make different, and I know you've already done a little bit on this, so but more information on that because that's going to be rather impactful, I think, for the neighborhoods.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that still going through the law department?
Well, so there's two parts of it. One is it's state law. The
Right.
other, of course, is that individual
Laws.
towns can add their own strictures. My
Right.
understanding is that
That,
the state law is, well, it doesn't really matter. But
well,
anyway,
that,
yeah.
that
So I
that's
don't
what
know if
I'm
that's
wondering
going to.
about is whether what Waltham has proposed is, first of all, in compliance with state law, and also whether it runs into other issues within the city itself. So, but that's actually Bill Holder was asking about, what other types of explainers. That might be a good one. Is if you want to build an ADU, what do you need to do?
Right, right.
Know a little bit about that because Priscilla, to answer your question, ADUs are additional dwelling units. And I did go to one council meeting where they may have actually put size limitations on how the size of them needs to be. So it is up to the cities, and they can vote on, something that can't be too small or too big. And so
Yeah.
that's something to follow up on. I think that's great.
We have a pretty detailed story about it from back in the spring sometime. So Priscilla, if you want to just search ADU on our site, you should find that story. It spells it out in pretty gory detail. Um, Anything related to traffic? I hear a lot of, angst about the traffic and dangerous bikeways, inadequate sidewalks, etc. Is there anything, or too much of it, or lack of planning for traffic?
I think a lot of this goes both zoning, traffic, and environmental green space all kind of rolls up into our lack of planning in the city or lack of resources spent on an overall plan and how we budget, how we use our overall budget.
Yeah. Actually, that is a story on our wish list that supposedly there is a city master plan initiative, but no one has, that I know of, has seen anything about it in quite a while.
Well, it might be interesting to do a story on the politics of planning.
Hmm.
So my understanding is that one of the challenges with a master plan is it takes longer to do than an election cycle to get it in. So there's a sort of negative
Right.
incentive. Yeah,
There's no benefit to a politician to get
right.
behind. You're saying, yeah. All right, that's interesting. What about our schools? We're kind of running to the end of our time, so I'm kind of zipping through this quickly. Any burning issue relating to our schools, or anything else you see on here? The immigrants.
Well, I guess I would offer a comment about the schools. I don't have children in the schools now. They graduated a couple of decades ago. But I have, looked at the reports that were in the Waltham Times and the state Department of Ed reports, and they're not encouraging about the sort of basic metrics that are used to evaluate school systems in the state. And despite the new facilities and the gleaming new high school, I mean, Waltham seems to be going in the wrong direction rather than the right direction in terms of improving academics. And again, I recognize the limits of my knowledge because my kids are not in school and I'm not that closely involved in the school activities right now. But it does look from a distance that there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other issue that we keep hearing about is the fact that extracurricular activities are not equally distributed, that kids, except for things like show choir, where there's a active fundraising, separate, that the extracurricular activities do not reflect the diversity of the schools, the population of the schools, the population of Waltham.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. What about any of these other topics? Immigrants in the city, food security issues, or, serving the situation of probably more and more people who are economically struggling. The cost of living in Waltham has shot up very dramatically, I think, in the last 5 to 10 years. Or business development.
Yeah, I would say any developments with the office parks on the outside of 128. There was talk of using more of those for biotech labs, and then ongoing coverage of any of the rerouting of traffic and the new off ramps, non ramps along 128.
And I'd build on that, on what Robert just said, June, regarding the environmental impact. I think, and working maybe with the Waltham Land Trust. So I know that there was recent coverage on development over by Lincoln Woods. And there's apparently the Land Trust has been working against those development ideas. Because how it will impact some of the conservation lands over there. So I think that kind of tension between, the green space in town versus the development town is an important thing to cover.
Well, and I think I think we've gone in the wrong direction in terms of public transportation, where some of the bus routes have been curtailed rather than expanding them. I think that there was some talk years back of adding bus routes and expanding public transportation, which in this day and age would be a good thing to do. I know that there was some talk at one point of, for example, using the trolley to help ferry people around within the city, having it, like taking people to appointments and things like that. That was a long time ago.
What about using I mean, there've been efforts to get MBTA to expand service, but in the absence of that, is there anything stopping the city from using the trolley and setting up its own?
Right.
Build on what Caroline just said. Also, if you remember at the candidate forums, they talked about the potential of extending the bus line to cover the universal playground, because right now it doesn't. And we have, Tim King is a new city councilor who has been on the transportation board. So maybe, his addition, might help the city council figure that one out.
Great, thank you. Um,
Maybe just one other point about, I know that the Times has had some articles about ICE and immigrant arrests, detainments, and some of the court activity locally. I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal about how, and this is maybe about 2 months ago, how ICE sort of perfected their system in Massachusetts, and they featured some of the activities in Waltham. And I thought, they brought a national focus to what is going on right here. And frankly, they conveyed a sense of alarm about the tactics that were used, and cars having their windows smashed to apprehend people inside them on Moody Street. And I think a level of alarm is appropriate, and I assume it's still happening and not just a one shot kind of situation. So I think that whole topic really is, to the point that was being discussed when Paul was on about, sort of the revulsion about losing democracy and norms of civilized behavior. I think there's a lot to mine there in that story, and it's very local, and it plays to the whole national issue going on.
yeah, no, thank you. We do have a reporter who is following as many cases, verified cases of people from Waltham who've been detained through the ICE system, and through, some of them are supposed to show up in court, and we did a story on one who he didn't show up, and what happened, he's disappeared from the system. So we actually are monitoring probably about a dozen such cases right now. The stories to actually gather enough evidence, verify it, so on, to where we can put out a story takes a lot of effort, but we are, we're on it. I guess I'd say we work on it. Sarah.
Yeah, on the same topic, I would just add to that. I'm curious to learn more about how the immigration situation is impacting local organizations who serve large proportions of immigrants. I'm thinking about, the work that I've done at Healthy Waltham, serving 500 families. Probably 95% of them, from my experience, are immigrants of various, documentation statuses. I don't know if they're seeing, people hesitant to show up at pantries because of perceived ICE activity, but just, we hear about the ICE raids, but the people who are actually, and like individual stories of people, but the organizations who are serving these groups, what impacts are they seeing on their operations?
This is Liz Holder again, and I want to say I really have been following these stories with a lot of interest, and I know how incredibly difficult it is to get information out of ICE at all. So the fact that you are able to get anything and cover this, I think, is really admirable.
Thank you. All credit goes to these very persistent and, I'd say, courageous reporters who are working on this.
This is David again. I still don't know how to raise my hand, but sorry, but there is a outfit I'm sure you've heard of called Ground News, and they specialize in trying to look at what's the spectrum of reporting. And I know you folks in the news business probably keep track of a lot of different sources of news. And when Andrew talked about looking at the Wall Street Journal, or I think it was Journal or whatever, New York Times article on, it occurred to me that we might be able to provide a function, which is, by the way, here's a pointer. You could go, the Globe has this, so that you have the kind of roundup. So people say, well, I want to know where I can go get reliable information. Well, the Waltham Times will point you to it, even if we don't do our own reporting on it. So just a thought. it could serve as a clearinghouse where people can say, okay, I can go and get a reliable, and that reliable information could be other papers. It could be YouTube videos that are actually decent, like Amanpour or somebody else, who's doing a good interview. And I imagine that among the group that's invested in this effort, there could be a lot of, it wouldn't necessarily have to be more staff work. It could be, all the supporters. Hey, did you see a good video or a good, social media? Those all these social media things. Anyway, it could be a clearinghouse for that where people say, "Oh, I know where to go. Waltham Times. I can get a link to something about this." Okay,
You
I'm
did
going to go
that
back.
with the ProPublica piece on insurance. That was a wonderful thing that was just today, wasn't
Yes,
that?
that was just today. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I do scan ProPublica for articles that because they make that available for free, but obviously you have to pick like what's particularly relevant to our readers. Obviously that's not a local story, but everybody deals with having a insurance claim turned down or lives with that fear, especially if you have.
Mhm.
Right, and you guys can be a source, June, when you came to our house to do the presentation, it's like we want to be a source of reliable information. And so when you get this list on an internet search, right, who's going to help you parse it? Well, Waltham Times can say, go to the ProPublica thing, go to this, go to that. And if you get that, a lot of people will, well, who knows? But anyway, it's a
Yeah,
possibility.
thank you. We
Can't find
are.
my phone, but we have, there is, Luce has a phone number for anybody who sees ice to call them and let them know that they've seen ice. So there is a lot of stuff going on in Waltham, and I know the Waltham Times has done a great job of putting it out there. And I have spoken to a lot of young people. They don't know what Mother Jones magazine is. That was a great article in Mother Jones magazine.
Oh my gosh. So to build on what Emily just said, June, I think not only, and what David just said, I think being sort of a resource, a go-to resource, of good recent articles, as well as just resources of, fact-based organizations is a great idea. And then I'd also suggest if you're doing an article like on, for example, food insecurity
Mhm.
or immigration, ICE immigration kinds of things, maybe at the end or as like a sidebar, helping people understand what they can do. I think a lot of us feel, um, we just don't know what little steps we can take, in terms of food insecurity or in terms of, ICE and immigration or any social service kind of issue in town. I think it would be great for the Waltham Times to help people see, how they can volunteer, how they can, alert about ICE and, whatever.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid we are at the end of our time. I would be happy to stay on if you want to keep chatting, but I want to be mindful of everyone's time as well. So maybe let's see. I guess we should wrap up. It went by so fast, and next year we very much hope to do this in person and be able to have more time and lots of yummy things to eat and drink alongside it, and seeing you all in person too. That's priceless. So so let's see. So just some final remarks. So uh, just a reminder that it takes many of us to sustain this enterprise. I hope you feel a sense of ownership over the Waltham Times, and that it is really your community. You're an integral part of it, and we welcome people onto the team as volunteers. We try to find a place where your skills can match, or just your energy. If you feel like you don't have a specific skill set, but just we need lots of bodies to do all kinds of valuable things, and we want you to all feel that what you're doing has impact, because it does. So, as I said, oh, I didn't mention before, but we also have, during our year-end campaign, something called a local match. We had two local donors make a $20,000 donation and challenge you to match that. And as I said, the new or increased monthly donors will help us unlock more funds from the Institute for Nonprofit News. And again, everyone who's making either $5 per month or a one-time $75 gift will be thanked with one of our amazing Waltham Times hats. So again, before the end of the year, it's a great time to give. It's going to put us on a solid footing that we need to launch into the next year and go onward and upward. I hope you agree that our team, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I am bragging about the team that we have. We have done a miraculous job putting out what we do put out with the resources, and I hope we've earned your trust that we are competent and capable to do this, and that our community as a whole is better off when we have a healthy, thriving local news source. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Paul Solman for being with us, and to all of our amazing volunteers. Thanks to you for reading and supporting us. You make this possible, and you're having a really meaningful impact on your community. So thank you, and good night.
Thanks, June.
Thank you.